Tales of the Jersey Shore is made possible in part by a generous grant from Greenwich Letterpress, proud third-generation printers with their roots in the Garden State. Greenwich Letterpress is pleased to support programming like this and to assist in documenting the history of their beloved Jersey Shore. Located in historic Greenwich Village, New York, more at greenwichletterpress.com.
Hi, I'm Emil Salvini, author and historian, and these are Tales of the Jersey Shore. I'm in Belmar, New Jersey, standing by what had once been a beautiful boardwalk that we documented just last summer, holding a piece of it right in my hand. As you can see, they're rebuilding after Superstorm Sandy destroyed a good part of the Jersey Shore. This is a tale, a somber tale, about Superstorm Sandy and other storms that took place over the last 100 years that decimated the Jersey coastline. It's also a story about hope and the people that call the Jersey Shore their home. We're fortunate today to be able to share with you photographs taken both by helicopter and on the ground by talented New Jersey photographer Tim Sharkey. We hope you find this an interesting tale. Records indicate that soon after the American Revolution, those that could afford to began to enjoy the Jersey Shore. It did not take long for these early residents to realize that building so close to King Neptune's lair could come with a heavy price. While storms were numerous, occasionally a 100-year or even a 300-year event could take place. The Great Atlantic Hurricane of 1944, the Nor'easter or Ash Wednesday Storm of 1962, and 2012's Superstorm Sandy were the heavyweights of storms, and each one left a permanent mark on the Jersey Shore. First detected on September 9, 1944, northeast of the Leeward Islands, it was quickly dubbed the Great Atlantic Hurricane by meteorologists. Prior to the 1950s, we had not begun the practice of naming these storms. The old-timers that had seen many storms in their day knew that New Jersey was in for a night of uncharted terror. The Great Atlantic Hurricane of 1944 would be remembered as the most horrific and destructive 20th century storm to strike the coast of New Jersey, until the next one came along.
About 4 days before Sandy came to our shores, we started tracking its progress up the East Coast. We were on a conference call at the governor's office, and someone from the National Weather Service was on, and at the end of everything he said, he summed it up this way: this will be a storm unlike anyone alive has ever seen before. And he was dead right.
Before the storm came, we kind of knew, batten down the hatches, because they said it on the news quite often. I mean, it was 2 weeks' notice.
We started to pre-plan for the storm probably several weeks before, and we certainly understood the gravity of the situation. Everybody kept saying it was going to be the storm of the century and all that, and I don't know what the storm of the century means. I do now. I didn't then.
Just had a feeling that this is, with a 10% chance going out to sea, this was going to change the Jersey Shore as we knew it, and as it has.
When I got there, my friend John was like, "Listen, dude, we're going to get hit," and people were bunkering down. Everything I left was gone.
Well, we heard the weather forecast, my fiance and I, and we had 18 inches of water with Irene last year, because I was just very upset that another storm was coming in a year's time from the last flood we had.
And at that point, we had heard from some of the weather forecasters that this might be the biggest storm that they've ever seen in their lifetime, and maybe in any of the people that were broadcasting their lifetimes.
Once we heard that, we took a look at our flood maps and realized that with the storm surge predicted and the rain predicted, we would have 75% of the town flooded.
The intent and the concerns started to really grow, that there was a very good chance that this monster of a perfect storm would come and possibly devastate our coastline and our neighborhood and the Jersey Shore as we know it.
I think a lot of people took it lightly because the year prior with Hurricane Irene, it was, get the hell off the beach, and it really amounted to, nothing. I mean, we had a lot of water in the basement and stuff like this, but it wasn't as bad.
I did not take the storm lightly. I didn't blow it off like in Irene, because I saw it was kind of like they were saying there's 2 or 3 storm fronts. We had the high tide, the full moon, and immediately thought of the Perfect Storm movie. And it was still more devastating than I ever imagined.
Because a week prior, I was in Jupiter, Florida, racing in an offshore race. Had no idea that this storm was coming up. And then by midweek, when I was back home, this storm was coming up, and the forecasts were like, this is going to hit.
Sandy was just a bad time for my family and my friends.
I've lived here for 45 years. I've never had any kind of flooding issues, weathered some pretty serious storms in the past. And, we take some precautionary measures, to move some furniture from one floor to the next, relocated cars to some higher ground, and, did some minor preparation, never thinking it was going to be as it was.
One of the things that we really did was we knew this was going to be a big storm. We didn't know how big it was going to be, but we knew it was going to be big. And so we were set up early on. We've got a pretty good Office of Emergency Management here. We do a lot of drills in town. We're a pretty big town. And since we have more waterfront property than any other town in the state of New Jersey, one of the drills that we do is on hurricanes and big major storms.
And it was kind of a shell shock because we really didn't know what to expect, and we weren't used to what was going on at that time.
I don't think that anybody's ever lived through it being that severe, but I think everybody kind of knew, man, this is going to be, one for the record books.
Our fire company was called out to be on standby for the storm, which puts us into situations where we would help out.
I remember going outside just to see how bad it was, and the sky was just lighting up green and blue with transformer fires, or transformers blowing all over the place.
The sky just lit up blue and, all kind of different crazy colors.
We're helping the borough people with trees falling in the ground, falling in the streets, and we were also there in case there were any evacuations to be done for people who decided they were going to stay, but finally decided that they didn't want to stay anymore.
They let us have a lot of notice, and a lot of people heeded it, and a lot of people didn't.
It was a frightening time in the state's history, as over 2 million households lost their power, 350,000 homes were damaged or destroyed, and 34 people lost their lives. It is estimated that Hurricane Sandy cost the state of New Jersey up to $30 billion in economic loss. Governor Chris Christie said the losses caused by Sandy were going to be almost incalculable. The devastation on the Jersey Shore is probably going to be the worst we've ever seen. As the storm approached, there were both mandatory and voluntary evacuation orders all along the New Jersey coastline. The government recognized the severity of the storm, and President Obama signed an emergency declaration for New Jersey. Sandy made landfall south of Atlantic City on October 29th.
It was unbelievable. And when the storm was finally over and we started to look into, trying to help people get their act together, there was still a lot of water in the town. There was nothing but emergency vehicles. There was, all the people around were, basically in shock, didn't know what to do.
Watching the news after the storm was gut-wrenching. You'd see, the fires in Manilokin and the homes that were destroyed, and I didn't know how my house fared.
I've been on many of catastrophes in my 30-year career of being a firefighter. I thought that I've seen it all, if not most of the worst, at a time when nobody really knew what we were up against and what we were about to face.
was a very difficult time for us, but we, when we actually got to our home, which was 2 days after the storm, we put our waders on, and that was very devastating. That was so surreal to me because I didn't know what was going on and seeing all the devastation.
With regard to our house, the first time I think we saw the 4 to 5 foot of sand surrounding our house, and what we thought at the moment was really devastation. And then 2 days later, we got to walk down the beach into Bayhead. The folks in Bayhead, when we walked down, we saw 25% of the homes gone, or with white X's on them to be demolished. I mean, that hurt.
And we walked down to the house, and I could see the high water mark. I had 5 feet of water in the house. It was halfway up the windows. I'm glad I didn't even think of staying, because I don't know what I would have done.
I felt that I had to get home. So I decided to take a chance and see what Ocean Avenue looked like. Just as I made that decision and started to make the turn, I heard a noise and I looked over my shoulder aside, and all I saw was a wall of water. And it came over and it just blew me down the road. Came over my truck and pushed me down. Actually, it was Lincoln Avenue in Avon.
I've had structural engineers and architects come and look at it, and one of the hardest decisions for me to make is the fact that it's going to have to be torn down.
I gave a good look out towards the north, where my home and my neighborhood, my friends that are more than friends, they're extended family, where they were. And I just prayed every time I went over the bridge. Keep my friends and my family safe.
It was frightening. It was horrifying. But you know what? You think about you think about all the older people, all the people with kids, you know. It was horrifying. Very scary for them.
You think it was just simple, that it was just water. It wasn't. Everything was floating. There were decks floating. There were garbage cans. There was tons of debris in the water.
In the meantime, I had called my son. I tried to call my wife and let her know what happened. I called my son. And I honestly, in talking to him, the water kept rising and rising and rising. And I really believe that there was a distinct possibility that I was not going to get out of it.
We have to look at New Jersey storm history today as before Sandy and after Sandy. But the next storm to follow, the 1944 hurricane, was another sort of beast. There were almost 70 years between the Great Atlantic Hurricane of 1944 and Superstorm Sandy. Too long a time for the Atlantic to let us forget its unforgiving power. Memories of the 1944 hurricane were fading, and people old enough to remember would call the next big event the Great Atlantic Storm of 1962 the Great Destroyer. A nor'easter, it did not attack New Jersey with the bravado of a full-fledged hurricane, but instead it came quietly to destroy the New Jersey coast and wash centuries of history out to sea. Although the term would not be coined for decades, the 1962 March storm was in meteorological terms a perfect storm. Unlike Sandy, a fast-moving destructive hurricane that left us after only 12 hours, the 1962 nor'easter, like an obnoxious relative, overstayed its welcome by pounding the New Jersey coastline for over 3 days and nights. After the storm departed, many residents of New Jersey woke up to see the destruction Sandy had created overnight. Plans and money were needed to begin the rebuilding process. When we first decided to do an episode on Sandy and other storms of the Jersey Shore, most people said to me, get to Manahawkin. Well, today, thanks to Chief of Police Mark Wright, we are allowed into this town which has been totally devastated, and the only people permitted in besides the first responders and state police are residents to check on their homes. You'll realize what I mean when I say Manahawkin is ground zero for Sandy on the Jersey Shore. Total devastation. We witnessed firsthand the washover effect, where temporary inlets were created and dozens of homes were washed away. Secondary damage, where one home crashes into another, was visible all throughout the community.
We're doing the best that we can. The last couple months we've been doing a lot of work to our infrastructure. We've been doing security, trying to keep people away from certain areas of town that were completely damaged.
We believe, on the in BRIC's perspective, because of the breach at the Manahawkin Bridge, we believe that several hundred homes would not have flooded, and possibly maybe a couple thousand, based on the engineer's estimate, would not have flooded if that breach didn't happen. You know, even in the storm of 1962, some of the areas that we're in town didn't flood during that hurricane. They flooded during this hurricane, and that breach was so big and so deep at the Manahawkin Bridge, it looked like a river, you know, coming from the ocean into the bay for, you know, a couple days after the storm was over.
Although Sandy devastated numerous towns north of Atlantic City, it took particular aim at a select few. Seaside Heights and Seaside Park lost many of their beloved amusements. The small hidden gem of a town, Union Beach, was totally decimated, and unlike amusement-driven or more affluent areas, it will never be the same.
And the next time I was back out was Thanksgiving Day, and that's when I went to Union Beach and covered Lawrence Harbor and all up in those areas. Union Beach was tough.
I went to a couple other places, so Union Beach was absolutely decimated. I mean, there have 14, 15 contractors just tearing houses down, taking them out. And Belmar, of course, is, you know, I don't think any of these places are ever going to be the same.
There was a lot of devastation in Union Beach. People's homes, entire neighborhood just washed away. Anybody that was up on the front lines of the Raritan Bay, Raritan River. It appeared to me there's a 13 to 15 foot surge that must have came in there and just pushed this whole neighborhood on top of all the homes on the other sides of the streets.
And we went to Union Beach, where we worked on houses, tearing down walls, helping with the reconstruction process.
Seeing tents set up at the firehouse, people living in these little tiny pump tents, and for such a small community, and who knows if they're ever going to be able to rebuild? Who knows if they're ever going to get back to where they were?
There was two things you saw. You saw total devastation, houses just piled up in a heap. And then you saw some of the more expensive houses that looked to be intact. And the first house we went in, that was the case. You walked in, the house looked fine. You're saying, why are we even here? And then they give you a crowbar and you start ripping up floors and smashing it into the walls. You feel, why am I doing this? Well, when you tear these walls down and you see that there's just tons of this black mold behind these walls that you really don't see, in the floors, in the cabinets.
The new FEMA flood maps have been a matter of concern for New Jersey residents. The previous maps had been in place since the 1980s and are used so insurance companies can determine rates. They have been released earlier than planned, and many residents mistakenly think they were created for Sandy when they were actually created shortly after Hurricane Irene.
The new FEMA flood maps that came out recently should be taken seriously by anyone and everyone who lives by the water. When you look at the flood maps, they were actually generated before Hurricane Sandy. If you compare them to the areas that were destroyed, devastated by Hurricane Sandy, they're dead on.
You know, one thing this storm did in conjunction with federal law that changed this past summer, the summer prior, is there's no more federal subsidies for flood insurance. So where in the past you might have been paying, $800, $1,500 a year for flood insurance. That's going away. So if you are below the base flood elevation on where you should be as a home, your flood insurance could go to $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. It's going to be unaffordable for people. So that's the reason why there's really no choice for people to elevate their home. You're going to have to elevate your home, or you're not going to be able to afford to live in it.
I do understand that it's expensive, but over the long term, it financially would be more beneficial to make the investment now in your property as opposed to either paying exorbitant flood insurance policy premiums or have no flood insurance for your property and have it get devastated again. And if that happens again, there's no guarantee FEMA's going to come in and bail you out a second time.
Residents that experience flooding are now faced with the task of raising their homes 1 foot above flood elevations. The most significant post-Sandy change will be that New Jersey will now use the FEMA maps issued in December. The maps add new areas to the 100-year floodplain or areas where there is a 1% chance of flooding. Some historians say a great leader is defined by historic events. Others say events define the man. During the unprecedented disaster called Sandy, New Jersey's Governor, Chris Christie, was there for his state.
I'm counting on the fact that our congressional delegation and the leaders of Congress, while I know they are consumed with fighting and bickering with each other about the fiscal cliff and all these other things, don't forget that people are suffering. People want to rebuild their homes. They want to rebuild their businesses. They want to rebuild their schools. They want to rebuild their state. And they can return to bickering as soon as they get done with the business that is the first responsibility of government, which is protecting the lives and property of its citizens.
Governor Christie came to Belmar the morning after the storm, and Belmar was the first place he came to. Gets off his helicopter, walks right up to me, and shakes my hand. He never said, I'm the governor and you're only the mayor. He never said, I'm a Republican and you're a Democrat. He said, Matt, if there's anything you need, just let me know.
I always like to say this, we have one of the most aggressive governors out of any of the states in the union, and we're lucky to have him.
I'm never a big fan of any politician because it seems like eventually they let you down, but I don't think this guy's gonna. I thought that he came here with a message, a strong message.
I think he's done a great job of trying to represent New Jersey and going there and fighting for the money and stuff like that. I'm really happy that he is coming down here and seeing our little neck of the woods.
I think he did a great job, and I think he was a big inspiration for people because he came in and he, kicked butt and took names and he's done what he said he's going to do.
I think he wasted no time in making the message clear, especially when it came to saving lives, about evacuation, how it's mandatory, you must leave, and if you don't, first responders will not be there to help you. It was a powerful statement. I think it relayed the seriousness of the storm, and I think it saved a lot of lives.
Governor Christie, he's like a hero in my eyes. He's just the guy out there. He's like the bull in the china closet. Whatever is going to make New Jersey best and better and stronger and healthier, that man's out there to do it. It's nonstop action from him.
He will get what he wants, and he'll yell and scream, and he advocates for his state the way, we want our governor to advocate.
And he has been true to his word since. He's been back to Belmar several times, and he was here for our groundbreaking when we put the first pile in, and he's committed, and we're going to hold him to his commitment, to be here for our ribbon cutting leading up to Memorial Day this coming summer.
Although they all did admirable jobs in dealing with an unprecedented event, from the governor to local officials, when asked, what would you have done differently? They all looked inward and without hesitation shared their thoughts with us.
I would have got to odd even gas more quickly. I went much quicker than New York did, and I think it calmed everything down here, got everybody going the right way. But I would have made that decision probably 2 days earlier, and I think I would have really lowered some of the stress and tension in the state a lot more quickly. So I probably would have done that differently if I had to do it again.
If there was one thing I could have changed, and I'm not sure if I even could have, it would have been my message for people to evacuate. I tried to be as stern as possible and as serious and forceful, but the fact that we had to risk people's lives the night of that storm because people didn't leave, I think we really did get lucky that we didn't lose anyone.
And I think a lot of the things that we've learned, I believe that you really should shut off power when a storm is approaching. We probably wouldn't have lost as many houses as we lost in Brick if it wasn't for the power being on. I think that some other states do it that way.
As the saying goes, those who forget the lessons of history are bound to repeat them. Will we make the right decisions, and will we be prepared?
The people that did ride out the storm will never ride out a storm like this again. And I think for the most part, when people see the pictures and the video, and then they see it in person, I think it really sets the tone of why Mother Nature is very unforgiving, doesn't worry about the size of your house, big, small, rich or poor, black or white, Republican, Democrat. What it does is it comes after everybody equally. And in a situation like this, I think people are really going to heed the warnings to evacuate in the future.
We get storms, but this season was different. And it just seemed like Sandy was the grand finale for 2012.
Unbelievable life-changing experience for everybody. I tell you, everybody east of Main Street knows a lot about each other now. A lot about each other. You got a lot more friends in your life, I can tell you that.
I don't, I'm really not going to be able to look at storms or anything else the same. It has really changed me.
This was a life changer. People, the hurricane parties, I think those days are coming to an end. People found out, no, it's not a party when houses get blown a mile inland. When I think I just read a couple of days ago, there's still 15 or 20 houses unaccountable. They don't even know where they are. There's like 79 boats that are unaccounted for. Things just vanished.
Sandy has changed the shoreline as we know it. The entire landscape of the Jersey Shore is going to change as we know it.
While we wish it never happened, I think it's important. I think it shows the character of our community and our state, how we respond and how we rebuild. And we should never forget that.
These photos demonstrate the awesome power of nature and are eerily similar to the millions of photos we have been seeing of Hurricane Sandy's destruction. It happened in 1944. It happened in 1962. It happened in 2012. And sadly, it will happen again. We hope you enjoyed this episode. It's about the amazing power of Mother Nature, the amazing resilience of the people of New Jersey. Stay tuned to NJTV for more tales of the Jersey Shore. We'll see you here Memorial Day 2013 for the grand opening of the new Belmar Boardwalk. This is Emil Salvini. Thank you.
Through this whole process, we've had the opportunity to work with Tales of the Jersey Shore, both before and after the storm. Before the storm, it was great to highlight what was existing. After the storm, it's important to highlight what we're doing and what's going to happen in the future. And I hope Tales of the Jersey Shore comes back and sees our future progress. And it's so positive for our community and for our residents to see what we're doing and to see it on programs like Tales of the Jersey Shore.
Tales of the Jersey Shore is made possible in part by a generous grant from Greenwich Letterpress, proud third-generation printers with their roots in the Garden State. Greenwich Letterpress is pleased to support programming like this and to assist in documenting the history of their beloved Jersey Shore. Located in historic Greenwich Village, New York, more at greenwichletterpress.com.